to another great episode of The Bourbon Road with your hosts, Jim and Brian, where they talk bourbon and, of course, drink bourbon. Grab yourself a pour, kick back, and enjoy another trip down the Bourbon Road.
We're very excited to have Blanton'sBourbonShop.com as a new sponsor for the Bourbon Road podcast. In fact, this podcast is brought to you by Blanton's Bourbon Shop. Blanton'sBourbonShop.com is the only official merchandiser for Blanton's, the original single barrel. Looking for a unique gift? Blanton's Bourbon Shop has got you covered. Blanton'sBourbonShop.com is your home for all Blanton's gifts. The Bourbon Road is excited to have pintsandbarrels.com as a sponsor of this episode, as well as our official custom apparel provider. Be sure to check out pintsandbarrels.com and browse their ultimate online store for bourbon lovers. Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Road podcast. I'm your host, Jim Shannon, and tonight it's Brian and Jim in the Bourbon Road bar watching football.
Playoff time. It
is playoff time. And I know this episode's going to come out a couple of days after the games, but I thought this is going to be fun, right?
Oh, yeah.
So this is going to be fun. Brian and I are picking opposing teams for the two games tonight, the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl. And we're actually sitting here watching the Alabama-Michigan game at the Rose Bowl right now, but it's so early in the game yet. It's close enough where we can say you can't pick a winner. Well, you can't be guaranteed a winner.
That's right. It's close.
It's close. So, but we're going to drink a couple of whiskeys tonight to match the games. We're going to do both games tonight. And the game that's on now, Michigan and Alabama at the Rose Bowl. Brian, you chose Alabama.
I did. SEC.
And you brought an Alabama whiskey.
That's right.
All right. So tell us a little bit about what's in our first glass tonight.
So we have the Clyde Mays Straight Bourbon. And this is, like Jim said, an Alabama bourbon. And it's Clyde Mays was a guy that was a moonshiner back in the day. And apple pills was kind of how I got started. Or apple slices, not pills, apple slices. And he wanted to have really clean stills. He wanted to produce amazing moonshine and moved on to whiskey. And here we are. And so Alabama style whiskey is an actual whiskey style, just like Tennessee whiskey or Indiana rye or Kentucky bourbon or whatever, but these are all styles of whiskey, and Alabama has their own style, and their style kind of falls back on the apple peels added in the barrel, right? That's right.
Or apple slices.
Apple slices, apple peels, all that good
and Clyde
stuff.
Mays kind of blazed the trail on that one. Well, I've had it before. It's been a minute since I did. And in fact, our liquor store here in Simpsonville did a pick of Clyde Mays. And they've got a barrel proof version over there. And I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet, but let's see what happens tonight.
All right. Well, we may have to do that.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
I don't get the apple. I mean, I get a little bit of a fruity note, but I can't say that's apple.
I really don't. I feel like I get more of the rye spice.
So this is a bourbon. Now, we all know that you can't flavor bourbons, and apple peels tend to do that just a little bit. So this is kind of on the edge, right? It's kind of pushing the lines about what's legal or not. But I would say this has a lot of the serious bourbon notes. It's got the caramel notes, a little bit of vanilla. You can get that kind of a little bit of a rye bite on it. So it's a rye bourbon, right? Do you know the mash bill by chance?
The mash bill is undisclosed.
Undisclosed. Well, a lot of people are doing that.
And it's sourced out of Indiana.
Yeah. So this is an MGP kind of
MGP. Yeah.
MGP bourbon. So we can guess one of two mash bills on that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But this is definitely a rye mash bill, rye bourbon. This is not their wheated mash bill, as far as I can tell.
I don't think so.
I think it's a good drinking whiskey. It's kind of what'd you pay for this bottle, Brian?
$40.
$40.
Yep.
Well, I think this is kind of a mid-level, mid-shelf bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a nice flavor to it. It drinks good. It's kind of, what's the proof?
92.
Kind of sessionable, right? I mean, you can sit down and drink through a bottle of this with a friend or two.
I think so. And it's, I don't think it's, all that viscous or anything.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a little more on the watery side.
Well, I like your Alabama whiskey, but let me ask you a question. Why is Alabama going to win tonight? I understand they're SEC, but.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they have a good quarterback. I feel like the defense is always dependable for the most part for Alabama. They're not the Alabama that they were 4 or 5 years ago, but they did beat Georgia.
Yeah.
And Georgia's pretty daggone good.
They are.
Oh, yeah.
I think they peaked in September, and you want to really peak in November, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you really want to peak a little bit later in the game, but schedules are everything.
Well, and I always say this, being a Kentucky fan, we're kind of this stepping stone. So it seems like when you play Kentucky, you peak when you play them and you continue on. Alabama had struggled all year, went into Lexington, and it was not pretty.
Yeah.
And then they never looked back. So.
Right. You need that little boost, that little shot of adrenaline.
And Big Blue tends to give that to everybody.
Well, what we've seen in the game tonight so far between Alabama and Michigan is that Michigan seems to be playing, part of their game, and Alabama seems to be struggling a little bit. It's just happening. However, Alabama just scored again.
Mm-hmm.
And, let's see. I mean, it's not looking good for Michigan at the moment. But moments can change.
It can change quick.
It can change really quick.
You just need one deep pass, one big run, fumble, interception, something like that, and you can turn.
So Kentucky's a sports betting state now, and we're in Kentucky. So, Brian, you got some money on it at Alabama?
That's right. Yep. I took Alabama money line.
Yeah.
So they would have been, depending on when, probably plus 1.5, plus 2.5, something like that. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, I took Michigan. Actually, it's kind of a funny story. I used DraftKings and I couldn't remember my password, and it was Michigan minus 1.5, and I was trying to log in. I couldn't remember my password. And it came up and told me I had one more try or it was going to lock me out. So I went to my one password and looked it up. I was like, okay, now I know what to do. And I went back and logged in. It popped up to 2.5. So, I mean, remember your passwords, folks. It can really get in the way of things.
Oh, yeah.
But, right now it's 17-13 Alabama. We're in the fourth quarter. I don't know. Let's see what happens.
Not a lot of yards
I know
in the second half here.
I like the Clyde Mays. I think it's a little bit different. Yeah, I mean, it's got a little bit of a different flavor profile, but it's a good, solid whiskey.
I feel like I do get the apple a little bit more now after a few sips.
You start to dial in that fruit.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I can get it.
Well, Brian, you weren't on the last show. We had Stanton Holder on from Pints and Barrels. We had a really good time.
Great guy.
He is a great guy.
Funny.
He's a lot of fun. And he came up to our area up here, and we just had him on an episode that we'll put out here real soon. But we had him up to the area here. He had to pick up some barrel wood. And so we got to spend a couple of days with him. It was a lot of fun. And we got to visit a few distilleries. And one of the things that really caught me off guard is we went to Buffalo Trace on a Thursday, right? I didn't know what the pick was going to be. Mm-hmm. There's all these sites anticipating what the pick might be, but it was just Weller Special Reserve that day. But when we went in, they told us that the limit on Buffalo Trace bourbon is a case.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. How about that? So if you're a fan of Buffalo Trace, bourbon, you can go to the distillery now when they're open in the gift shop, and you can buy a case at a time.
That's awesome.
That is pretty awesome.
I would recommend doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I can't imagine that that's going to be the case for too terribly much longer. Maybe it will be, but
and $27 isn't bad, right?
Oh my gosh,
$27 a bottle.
It's a great purchase.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that I've been doing, and I think it's once a quarter. They do have a barrel pick option that comes out, and it's a point system. So when you sign up, you get points, and you can be entered into the drawing. And they send out these really cool videos and all that good stuff. But I was looking, they just released it a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, something like that. And I'm sitting on the edge of my seat waiting for my number to be pulled. I'm like, man, this is going to be awesome. And the bottles, I believe you can do like Weller Foolproof, Stag, and then a bunch of other ones. I'm trying to pull up the email right now, but yeah, it's a pretty cool experience. Sazerac Barrel Select is what you would go to.
Is that the website?
That is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Cool.
Yep. And so they have Blanton's, Buffalo Trace, Stag, Weller Foolproof, and then there's a couple other ones in there as well.
That is pretty awesome.
And I'm just really hoping one of these days they pull my number. Now, Leslie probably won't be too happy if they pull my number.
Yeah, because you still have to buy it.
Because, they're
not giving you the bottle.
Right. When you enter in each drawing, you're saying that you're going to buy the barrel. It's not like a do you want it or do you not want it? You're saying you do.
Yeah.
So you're looking anywhere from a $7,000 to $12,000 investment to purchase that barrel. But
wow,
that's a really
so
really
if you get
cool
that
deal.
whole barrel of Weller Foolproof, you're going to end up with 200 bottles of Weller Foolproof.
Yep,
Brian's pick.
That's right.
Shared with Jim.
So they actually they had Freddie Johnson on there doing the pick this last time, and that was pretty cool, and he had his nice little spin on it and everything, and but it was a super cool video that they put out, because it's not a live drawing, so that's pre-recorded, all those types of things, but they know what they're doing, and they're doing a good job with it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. So some final notes on this Alabama whiskey here. I still don't nail the apples. I can lean in on your decision there, Brian, that the fruit is an apple, but kind of it doesn't come across as real apple-y, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I
agree.
Yeah.
But I mean, more than anything, I do. The rye spices jumped out as the first note to me.
Yeah, yeah. It's
very present.
It's subtle, if anything. All right, so we're switching over now because we all know Michigan's actually going to win. So I had a choice between two Michigan whiskeys. They were both from Traverse City Whiskey, and I had a choice between a barrel proof rye and the single barrel bourbon that just was on the episode a couple of weeks ago, actually a week ago, and that actually won the blind bottle challenge. So I'm going to have that one today because I like winning, and I haven't won that in 5 years. That's the first time I've won the blind bottle challenge in 5 years. So I'm going to play this bottle for everything it's worth. I'm bringing it in to represent Michigan today because I do believe they're going to win. Now, Brian, I know you bet big money when you play, but man, I'm sorry. I got $5 on this one.
Yeah. No, and I'll tell you this. I grew up and I've loved Michigan. Loved them.
Yeah.
And the first thing, probably the first reason why I fell in love with them was the fight song. And the fight song is awesome.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I grew up in Ohio, and you weren't allowed to like Michigan. You had to like Ohio State. But then I moved to northwestern Ohio, about an hour from the Michigan border, and it's kind of like 50-50 up there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's surprising, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you get up near Lima, Ohio, Toledo, Ohio, and there's it's amazing that how many people defect from Ohio State.
That's so crazy. The thing that I love about that Ohio State Michigan rivalry is I can remember it was probably 5 or 6 years ago when they were getting ready to play each other. The Ohio State players would not say Michigan.
They wouldn't say the word.
They would say the team up there.
Yeah, the team up there.
That is a rivalry.
Yeah, I would go visit my grandmother. And I think I've said this on past episodes, but I would go visit my grandmother who lived in Columbus. And if her boys were playing Ohio State, it didn't matter the sport. It didn't matter the sport. It could be basketball or football to her. She didn't care. Baseball. Doesn't matter. As long as her boys were playing. Yep. You didn't get her attention. And I hadn't seen her in 6 months, but if I came there on a day when Ohio State was playing,
you had to wait.
I had to watch the game with her at least, right?
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, but she was a big fan. But I lived in Lima for a while, and I had family members who cheered Michigan and cheered Ohio State both. So it was one of those things like, Mason-Dixon line, north and south. It was gonna,
Well, you see, but it's different here in Louisville. You have people that, believe it or not, they root for both.
Yeah,
they do, and it's you get down to Lexington, that doesn't happen. But here in Louisville, it's kind of a thing. You house divided.
Yep. So we're sipping on a 6-year single barrel Traverse City straight bourbon whiskey. Very transparent. So even though they do make their own whiskey, this particular expression is sourced from MGP. So totally honest, totally open. Sourced from MGP. I do believe it's contract distilled, but I gotta verify that. But I'm pretty sure it's a contract distilled whiskey. But this is going to be a little bit stronger than what we had before.
And I like that.
So cheers.
Cheers.
Got a little bit more ethanol in the nose for sure. That's just a full-bodied.
Man, that's good.
Full-blown. Brian, this whiskey is going to sack your quarterback. I do believe.
No, it will. Absolutely. But that is such a big departure from what we just had. And, one of the things I was going to ask you, Jim, is how do you feel about transparency? Do you, because, there's a lot of distilleries out there that don't disclose, what's in the mash bill. And then others that are just, they print it right there on the label. They say exactly what's in it.
Well, I think it's okay to not say anything. Like, don't say anything, right? Print on the label what you're required to. Don't say anything and let people do a little bit of guessing. And we do that all the time, right? Happens all the time. I think that's okay. It's not okay to lead people to believe one thing,
right,
and then have it be another. So that's where, you read the label, or you listen to a podcast, or you look at some, marketing information on social media or whatever it may be, and you get delivered one bit of information and then you come to find out another. That's a problem.
Yep.
So I always like full transparency. I love people to just fill their label up with all kinds of details. You got to print a label. There's all kinds of space on it. Give us something to chew on while we're,
Well, and if you're not going to give us the details, give us a good story. Tell us a little bit. And that's one of the things on the Clyde Mays bottle. They have a lot of information on there, and it's good information. I like it, but they're not going to tell you much.
Yeah.
I know some people that truly believe that they don't want to buy anything if they don't know what they're buying, and they want the full transparency. I'm not really that way. I'm good.
I mean, if I've tasted something and I know it's good, and the label doesn't tell me anything. In other words, it just says the legal minimum. I'm all about what's in the bottle. I really like that. And honestly, and there's going to be some listeners that disagree with me. I don't care if it comes from MGP. I like to see that the distillery has some craft involved in what they're doing, not just buying barrels and putting them in bottles. I like to think that they're selecting barrels based on some amazing capability in their palate, their ability to pick really good barrels, or they're blending small batches using the right choices of 2 or 3 barrels, or they're finishing whiskeys, expertly using wine barrels or honey barrels or whatever it might be. So I like to see some craft in it. But as long as they're honest with me and they tell me what's in the bottle and where it came from, I'm fine.
Yep.
Even if they can't tell me where it came from, don't tell me it came from you.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And you're right. Some people, they really are turned off by the MGP and all those different things. But
MGP makes some amazing whiskey.
Like I've always said, if you like it, drink it.
And they're turning tens of thousands of barrels, guys. So some of them are in the bottom floor of this rick house. Some of them are in the top floor of that rick house. Some of them are 5 years. Some of them are 8 years. When you go in there as a distillery to pick a barrel, or you negotiate with them for a barrel that you want to pick, you're the one tasting that barrel and saying, that's representative of what I want to put out of my bottle. There's some craft in that already. There's craft in that. If you're doing some blending or some finishing, that even adds to the craft. So I'm a true believer in that. Well, it's 17-13 Alabama right now. Michigan managed to get a field goal when they should have got a touchdown, but that's all right. They're within 4 points. Let's see what happens. We got 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, but let's pretend for a moment, Brian, that whiskey is football. Who's winning this game?
Well, definitely not the SEC. I think that I would give the edge to Michigan. I really like the Clyde Mays.
Yeah, it's good.
I did. I like it.
Yeah.
Like for $40, man, go pick that up. Like there is no reason not to get that. But yeah, this Traverse City, I got to give them the nod tonight.
Yeah, it's pretty good stuff.
It's pretty good.
There's a good reason why it won the blind challenge the other night. It's just a good solid whiskey. I think Amzie hit it right when he said it checks all the bourbon boxes, right? It's balanced, but it's a true bourbon. It's got that caramel. It's got that wonderful vanilla note. There's a little bit of spice on it. It's kind of the nose matches the palate. Just a great all around whiskey. And MGP does that, and Traverse City was able to zero in on these particular barrels for their single barrel release. I'm sure these are all differing a little bit from one barrel to the next, but this particular barrel is really good.
And what's the proof on this?
115.6, I think it is. So definitely, I don't know if there's a fair matchup with the Clyde Mays.
Yeah. And it packs a punch, and that's solid. I will say, there's Clyde Mays does have some different releases out there. And there was one that I was really wanting to go pick up today, and I just didn't have the time to do it. But I know that Clyde Mays is a good brand. They put out good stuff. And, this is the $40 version. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, Brian, I appreciate you going head to head with me tonight. It was a lot of fun. We don't know who's actually winning the ball game yet.
That's right.
We do know who won the whiskey game, though. Michigan won the whiskey game.
That's right. So somebody wins.
Somebody does win. Let's see what happens in the game. We'll find out after this episode releases, but that's all right. Folks, stick around. In the second half, we got 2 more whiskeys and another ball game coming up.
That's right.
Looking for a unique gift? Blanton's Bourbon Shop has got you covered. All of their handcrafted wood products are made in their in-house wood shop with authentic bourbon barrels. Specializing in barrel-aged potent treats, they use Blanton's barrels to age their own maple syrup, honey, and coffee. Find the most unique gift ideas for your golf lover, cigar connoisseur, avid coffee drinker, and Blanton's fan. Want to win an authentic Blanton's Barrelhead? Make sure you sign up for the giveaway on the homepage of their website. BlantonsBourbonShop.com is your home for all Blanton's gifts. If you're a bourbon drinker, and I bet you are if you're listening to this podcast, you need to head over to pintsandbarrels.com and check out the ultimate online store for bourbon lovers. Pints and Barrels Company was started by bourbon lovers for bourbon lovers. From spices to t-shirts, you'll find the perfect bourbon gift. Pints and Barrels proudly supports the Bourbon Road and invites you to visit pintsandbarrels.com. You need a custom apparel or swag for your bar, distillery, maybe even your bourbon society. They can do that too. As a matter of fact, they print our apparel. We're so happy with the quality and fast turnaround. Pintsandbarrels.com, the ultimate bourbon lovers gift shop and branding specialist. All right, folks, so we are back. We're drinking college football tonight. And in the first half, Brian had Alabama.
Had the Alabama, Clyde Mays.
Yep. And I had Michigan, Traverse City. I think we kind of agreed that the Traverse City kind of won the whiskey game. Mm-hmm. We're looking at the ball game now. There's a couple of minutes left in the game, and it is Alabama out front. Michigan's trying like hell to score.
They're making their move. We will find out what happens. Well, we won't find out what happens probably until Wednesday when everybody looks back and sees if Jim or Brian won the game, right? That's right.
All right. Well, this is the second half of the show, folks. We got 2 new whiskeys, and this is Sugar Bowl.
This Sugar Bowl.
So we did the because of the order of the games that were being played on New Year's Day was Rose Bowl, then Sugar Bowl. We went in that order. But the whiskeys from this particular half come from the Sugar Bowl. And Brian is a big, I don't know if you're a Texas fan, but you chose Texas.
That's right. I'm not necessarily hook 'em horns, but I don't have any issue with them.
Yeah. You're not like anti-hook 'em horns.
No.
All right. But Washington is not your team today.
Not today.
All right.
I do like Penix Jr., but
yeah,
not today.
All right, so this is going to be a great game tonight. We're in advance of that. We're drinking whiskey. In our first glass here, we have some Texas whiskey. What do we have, Brian?
We have TX straight bourbon whiskey finished in sherry cask.
Oh, my goodness. You brought a sherry cask finished Texas whiskey. And what's the proof on this one?
The proof on this is 101.6.
Okay, so we've got an above 100 proof, some sherry cask finished Texas whiskey. We all know that Texas whiskey kind of ages just a little bit faster than the rest of us.
Got that heat.
Yeah, it's got that heat. That cold at night. Man, perfect combination, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, let's check this one out. Man, this is like mahogany color.
It is so dark.
So dark. As typical with Texas whiskeys, you usually get this deep wood mahogany, right? Yep. I mean, it's always a darker whiskey. It definitely picks up those char colors from the barrel.
Wow, that is all sherry on the nose.
Yeah, it's definitely got a huge grape note on it, doesn't it?
It does.
A little bit of tobacco too. So that's that. Man, I mean, normally you don't get tobacco until the later years, but I'm getting a little bit on this one. Grape and red man a little bit, kind of mixed. Cheers.
Cheers.
Wow, that's a scrumptious whiskey. Got a little bit of a medicinal note on it, but not too much. Barrel played a huge part in this bottle.
Yes, it did.
All right, give me a little more background here. Why'd you choose the horns?
So I like Sarkeesian.
Yeah.
I think he's a pretty cool guy. Of course, one of the cool things about him outside of everything that he's done up to this point in his career was he had open heart surgery, didn't miss a beat, just kept going, and his team's here. Pretty cool. But my brother also went to graduate school down there. So spent a little time, beautiful campus, fun place, hot as all get out.
Yeah, it is.
I think I went in mid-July to hang out, and we played golf. Slightly miserable playing golf, but
just a little miserable.
but it's a beautiful place down there. A lot of cool things. We drove up to Round Rock, down that area, and my buddy was playing minor league baseball, and so that was a lot of fun to hang out. But and then they're going to be in the SEC next year.
Yeah.
So welcome
to the SEC. Life's good in the SEC.
Not always for everybody, but for some teams it is. Yes.
It is a tough class of teams. No
That's
doubt.
right.
Well, this has got a really deep and rich flavor to it. You can almost taste like the dark grape notes on it, kind of a little bit of a grape skin, sherry. I love it. It adds such a character to bourbon. When you add a bourbon that's got a little bit of proof on it and it has this deep, rich, dark color, a lot of barrel influence.
Yeah, I can say I haven't always been a big fan of sherry cask.
Mm-hmm.
I like this one.
Yeah, so neither one of us have had this bottle before. You cracked the seal on this one tonight. It's a brand new bottle. Good stuff. TX Distillery. You don't see them a lot, do you?
You really don't.
Yeah, but they're out there, and it's good whiskey, and you don't want to pass it up if you see it on the shelf. I absolutely believe that.
I enjoy this one.
All right, you ready to move on to some real whiskey now? I'm just kidding, Brian. This is good stuff, but so I chose Washington in the Sugar Bowl, and the game hasn't started yet. It should start here any minute. Once we see Michigan put away Alabama, it's 2020 right now, by the way, folks. Who knows what's going to happen? It's very, very close.
Very close.
Of course, in order for me to be in the money, I got to win by 3 because I got 2.5. So let's see. I got to overcome 2.5 points in this game.
I played it safe. I went money line. So.
Yeah, good deal. Awesome. Well, it's 52 seconds left. It's 4th and 4. Alabama has the ball, but they got to choose what to do here.
ESPN Analytics says,
yeah,
4th and 4 or lower, you go for it.
Yeah. I'm not feeling good about my prospects right now, Brian.
I'm not feeling good about mine either.
Are you?
No.
So it's that close, huh?
It is. They're going to punt. So there we go.
And if in 54 seconds, if we could turn around a field goal, Jim's in the money.
That's right.
So, all right. So we've got in our glass right now, we've got a Washington State whiskey. This is, I don't know. I'm guessing people can figure out who I'm choosing here. There's a couple of really good distilleries. There's a number of really good distilleries in Washington State, but one that I've, it's kind of near and dear to my heart is Woodinville. And we've got a Woodinville private select single barrel bourbon today. And it is at 120 proof.
Holy cow.
What just happened? What did I miss?
Muffed punt, but Michigan recovered it on their own 1 yard line.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's see what happens. I'm not sure the results will be available by the end of the podcast, but okay. So we're drinking 120 proof Woodinville whiskey, single barrel select. Good stuff.
Wow, that nose is solid.
It is solid, but we're putting it up against a good solid TX whiskey as well. Texas versus Washington. I'm not biased, but this has got a little more true bourbon to it, as far as I'm concerned. It's got a little bit more what you might expect out of a bourbon whiskey. TX was a little off note. It had a little bit of a medicinal note to it.
Yep.
But that's my call. What do you say?
I agree with that 100%.
Do you really?
I do.
Okay, just making sure I'm not favoring my team here.
Like, I mean, as far as sherry cask goes, that was one of the better ones that I've had.
Yeah. It was really good. And there's such a deep flavor to that whiskey. The TX whiskey is phenomenal. They really make good stuff. It's overtime, and you know what? All right. We'll announce that, but we're not going to tell you anymore.
That's right. We're done.
We're done.
If there might be some cheers in a little bit, but who knows?
All right. So the Michigan-Alabama game, 2020, at the end of the fourth quarter, it's going into overtime, and only time will tell who walks away with it. But as far as the whiskey goes, Brian, what do you think?
Well,
we're waiting for Brian. He's got all these real deep thought looks on his face.
Honestly, maybe it's becoming because it's coming after the sherry cask. I'm kind of worried that the TX with the palate and everything, that it's hard to follow that up.
Yeah.
So Woodinville is very, very good. No question. Let me chew on this for another second.
Chew on it. So I'm going back and forth. I've got liquid in both my Washington glass and my Texas glass. I've got my TX whiskey from Texas. I've got my Woodinville whiskey, bourbon whiskey from Washington State. They're almost 20 proof points apart. The TX is so much darker than the Woodinville.
It is.
Yeah.
Wow.
But there's that little medicinal note I'm getting off the TX.
Mm-hmm.
I love the grape and the tart. I'm not going to say tartness, that dryness of the grape, but that medicinal note has got me like scratching my head just a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like this one's a little bit closer than the Traverse and the Clyde Mays. But I think I hate to be a two-time loser, but in all fairness to everybody, I do agree that there's a little bit of that medicinal note. And
but is it off-putting to you? Because I mean that
it to me it is, yeah, typically
a little bit.
So yeah. But again, as far as sherry cask goes, this is, and I'm not a big sherry cask guy. So keep that in mind, that I don't run to anything that's sherry cask. But this is one of the better ones that I've had. But I think Woodinville takes it. I do.
Woodinville takes it. I think TX is a wild card.
Mm-hmm.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
No
I mean,
doubt.
I love the wild card.
Yeah.
I think that's why we do this.
All right. So, folks, for this show, we're watching football. We're drinking whiskey that matches the state. In the Rose Bowl, we had Michigan. We have Alabama. So for Michigan, we had Traverse City whiskey. For Alabama, we had Clyde Mays. And in the whiskey world, who won, Brian? Traverse City?
I wish I had a little sip left, but yes, I do believe Traverse City.
All right.
I'm going Michigan.
Yeah. So we'll see who wins the game, folks, but because it's going into overtime. But on the whiskey front, Traverse City whiskey won the day, and it did win the day a couple episodes back, or one or two episodes back, with the blind bottle challenge. So awesome.
Yeah. Good stuff.
All right. So second half, Sugar Bowl, Texas, Washington. What do we think, Brian?
Hook 'em horns.
Hook 'em horns. All
Hook 'em
right.
horns.
Hook 'em horns. I'm going with Washington State, but on the whiskey front, we're drinking Woodinville from Washington, and we're drinking TX from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Who takes the whiskey game?
Woodinville.
I tend to agree with you.
And I think it's closer than probably what we thought it would be.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I think it is. I think the TX brings a lot of really cool stuff to the table. I think for me, it was just that little medicinal note that sort of threw me off.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, it was deeper, darker, richer, and had more depth of character.
Mm-hmm.
But it had that little medicinal note that kind of threw me off.
So dark.
Yeah. So Woodinville whiskey, single barrel, 120 proof, good stuff. You know, there's great whiskeys all across this country.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting out there this year to see a few of them. Brian, we've got a lot of plans for 2024. Hit the road, visit some distilleries, go to some hometowns for some of our listeners.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be fun. All right, folks. Well, we'll all find out on Wednesday when this show releases how close Jim and Brian were to figuring out who's going to win the Sugar Bowl and the Rose Bowl. At this point, I honestly don't know the answer to either one. Do you?
I do not.
All right.
Do not.
Thanks for listening to us again, folks. We're having a great time here tonight. It's always fun on the Bourbon Road. Every single week we put out an episode. On Wednesdays, make sure you set your app to alert you when the Bourbon Road puts out an episode. Just go to the top, hit that subscribe button. You'll get a notification saying Jim and Brian have put out another episode. And you can find us on all social media outlets. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Threads, TikTok. We're on them all. Absolutely. Every single week. Make sure if you're on one of those social media outlets, you follow the Bourbon Road. You like us. You jump in and raise our ranking. Help us get more listeners. We love to have new listeners to the Bourbon Road. We also have a Facebook page, private Facebook group called the Bourbon Roadies. Brian, what do they have to do?
Well, you just want to answer 3 questions. Are you 21? Do you like bourbon? And do you agree to play nice?
Because we don't let any ruckus happen in the Bourbon Road. You can't chop them off at the knees for what they're drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Respect each person for what they like to drink, right?
That's right.
And how thick their wallet is, right? Because some of these bourbons get pretty expensive.
They do.
And some of us just can't afford them. So we buy what we can afford.
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, hop onto the bourbonroad.com. If you've got an idea for a show, if you've got an idea for a bottle, if you've got an idea for a distillery that Jim and Brian need to go to, make sure to let us know about it. On the Contact Us page on our website, thebourbonroad.com, you can send Brian and I a message. We'll read it. We'll get back with you. We love to hear back from our listeners. You can always email us. I'm Jim at the Bourbon Road. He's Brian at the Bourbon Road. Together, we are team at thebourbonroad.com. We put out an episode every single week. We hope you tune in. But until the next time, we'll see you down the Bourbon Road.